Welcome back. In this session, again, we are going to continue our discussion on the parallel processing techniques. Now that we are aware of what is a form step and how we can import values or determine agents from business object type, because in the previous or in the earlier session, in the previous session, that we just try to determine values dynamically at the runtime instead of assigning the agents statically in the workflow design. So now that you should be aware of how we can actually make use of business object type methods or any function modules that are really responsible of identifying the responsible agents or the persons who are really eligible or the authorized people for taking some actions on the activities. So that is how actually you can make use of your business object types even in determining the agents also. Now, as I just tried to miss out one of the points in make you understanding about the function groups within the workflow builder. So I just wanted to revisit the same workflow template, whatever that we were working in the previous session. So I'm just trying to navigate to workflow builder by executing SWDD transaction. So once I execute to SWDD transaction, as you can see that it is the same workflow template that I just tried to use to create a form and get it approved. Okay, so whenever you create a form template, right, form step, so the thing is that one thing that you are supposed to understand is that the step is actually creating you a screen, SAP screen or SAP GUI screen or your screen, whatever that we were trying to click on. Layout. A layout is getting created and generated by the system. So this whole layout is actually stored in a function group, and this function group is assigned to your workflow template. So that is the reason why your workflow, where at the runtime it was able to identify and map your fields, whatever the fields that you just tried to store within your workflow container. It was just trying to pull the program, whatever the program that it just tries to pull the values from your workflow container to your SAP GUI screens, whatever that we just tried to see. So this whole thing, the whole implementation logic of this DinPro screen is by default gets created in a function group. So where you can find that function group is just navigate to the basic data of your workflow template, and here you can see that there is an icon which has been enabled under your function groups under version independent. You just navigate to your function group. As you can see that the name of your function group is nothing but prefixed with Z, WS with the name. If you have your own name of the function group, you can just give your function group name, and the form step, whenever you are trying to create, it just tries to make use of the same function group. So that is what even this particular description says, like whenever if you don't assign anything, it just tries to create a function group with the same name, and it gets the screens and the logic, whatever that is relevant to the form step, it gets stored in this function group. So in case that is the reason why it was there is a possibility to change the look and feel or the appearance of your the SAP GUI screen, whatever that we just saw when we try to click on display layout. So you also have a possibility to just go and check or change the layout in the way in which it is appearing. So the whole screen logic, whatever the logic that is available, so you can find it in that function group. So that is what the function group is. And now I just wanted to navigate to my this thing, what do you say, instead of WF agents assigning over here. So this was one more point which I just tried to miss out. So in the agent section earlier, I was just trying to make use of workflow initiator in the previous examples or the use cases, whatever that I just tried to give you or show you as a demo. But now what I just try to do is, like, I just try to make use of this container element, which is a multi-line container element or an internal table in terms of ABAP. Okay, so you can see icon is also available against the name of the container element. So I just try to make use of this multi-line container element, and based on the number of agents that I receive or gets the number of agents that are populated within this container element, to all the people I'm just trying to distribute or forward the form to all the agents who are stored or populated in this container element. So that is the reason why in the previous example or in the previous session, when I just tried to execute the workflow. So it was sent to the form was sent to 3 people, 1, 2 and 6, and once I opened and without taking any action, so the work item or the form was reserved under my name, and the other from other 2 users inbox, that form gets disappeared. So that is a standard behavior of your workflow, so don't worry about it. So in case if this is not the case, but you want to send it to 3 different people, and out of 3, as I said, you want to get at least you want to make sure that at least 2 people has to approve it. So in that case, how do you do that? Or at least out of 3, 1 has to approve it, and remaining 2 can reject. So even this is also possible, and you can define the condition in such a way also. But to just make you understand, what we can just do is, like, we'll just try to clear this expression, and we'll just try to navigate to my miscellaneous tab. And once I navigate to miscellaneous tab, here is my dynamic parallel processing with a multi-line container element. So what I do is that I just try to assign this WF agents a multi-line container element to this into this tab, in this tab. So once I assign this WF agents, a line gets created. So for that, again, I just wanted to show you that currently the state of your work item container something looks like this. So the elements which are highlighted in the black color are all the elements which I created, and the elements which are in a disable mode or in dim color, so those are something which are standard by default whenever you create any workflow. So these are imported or created within your workflow container. So now you can see the state. There is no new container element. So let's try to just click on enter. Okay, and once I click on enter, does not allow modeling of outcomes. Okay, let's see why it is not allowing. Okay, let's click on this. Okay, and now let's look at the change. How does it look like? Okay, there was no line actually included, but you also have a possibility to do that. So let's navigate to the control tab and check whether I'm able to assign the agent directly. So let's look at this, and you can see over here that I'm able to actually just assign this agent. Now the reason why I'm able to do this is because when I just try to include this agent or the multi-line content element. So what does this dynamic parallel processing does basically is that based on the number of rows that are populated within this multi-line content element, so the work items are actually distributed, or independent work items are distributed to the number of rows or number of users that are populated in my WF agent. So that means in the previous example, it was just sending one work item or duplicating one, or it is just sending one work item to 3 different users, and if any one user opens the work item, and if any one user reserves the work item, so the work item is getting disappeared or will be cleared from other users. But when I do this activity, like assign some multi-line container element in the miscellaneous tab, it means that it is just trying to create each and every individual work items for all the users. So if I take a previous session example, so when I assign this WF agents, and if the airline ID is AA, so the populated agents would be 1, 2 and 6. So what happens is a new work item is created to 6, a new work item is created to 1, a new work item is created to 2. So irrespective of whether any one of the users opens the work item and without taking any action, he just tries to come back or navigate to some other screen, in spite of this also the 3 work items remains in each of their inboxes. So that is what a parallel processing is. Parallel processing is you will get 3 different, based on the number of rows or entries that are stored in this multi-line content element, it dynamically creates that many number of parallel work items and it tries to assign. Okay, and as I said, like the condition is that out of 3 you want to make any one of them at least one action is done. So you can define an end condition for that also. So usually we do this with the fork. Even this is the same behavior with the fork. The only difference between the fork and this miscellaneous tab is that the fork is a static definition. So whenever you try to define or include a fork step within your workflow, at the definition point or during the time of creating the step, you are supposed to mention that these many are the number of parallel branches that you are looking to include within the workflow step, and this should be the end condition. So but whereas when it comes to dynamic parallel processing, you are not trying to define anything statically, but based on the number of rows that are included or populated within the multi-line content element, the workflow system itself will try to create that many number of parallel branches. So let's say if workflow agents have 10 rows, so dynamically the workflow system during runtime it creates 10 parallel branches or parallel outcomes. Okay, so that is what actually happens. So that is how it looks like. So here is a place where you can just define your end condition. Again, you also have a possibility that once if any you can just get the counter over here, like how many times is it activated, or just define some end condition, and you can make use of this end condition to end the dynamic processing. It is not really necessary that, let's say if 10 agents are populated, all the 10 until and unless all the 10 agents approve, you don't want to proceed further. That should not be the case. Out of 10, if majority of the people, let's say 6 people have approved it and remaining 4 have rejected it, so you can consider this as approved, or you can just move ahead, right? So based on the status also, you can just check moving ahead to the next step of the workflow. So it all depends on the use case, the one which you want to define the end condition. But what I wanted to highlight over here is that you also have a possibility to define the end condition, and when you click on here, it's just the same conditionator which we just tried to use when we tried to include condition steps. You can just make use of all the possibilities that you can find within the conditionator and define a condition. So let's that is what. So once you define over here, so how do you make sure that each and every agent will receive? So your W for par index is something like, it will just try to dynamically change. So it is something, as I said, like the number of agents. If for the first time it will be 1, and a work item will be sent to the person who is stored in the first row, and then again it dynamically executes and increments this par for each to 2. So whatever the user is stored in second row, it will be sent to the second row. So that is how actually it behaves. So let's see how does it look like. So I just tried to change the same version without trying to create any version, but usually this should not be the case. You should first whenever you are trying to change even minor changes, so I would recommend you to first generate a version by navigating to menu, under workflow, click on generate version. So let's activate the workflow and look at this. How does it look like? So again we go back to the same program and execute it. Let's change the value to something else. Let's make it to some, let's say AZ or DL. Let me make it to DL, and let me change the connection number to something else. Let's say New York, and let me try to find out some flights on this date. So let's say I have a flight on, let's say 5/4/2009, and it is for the same customer. He's a smoker and is a Y class. So let's say give some values and just click on save, and let's navigate to SWI1. Okay, let me choose the work item type as F and click on execute. So once I click on execute, as you can see in the previous execution, I just tried to send the work item as AA, or the flight booking information was AA. And now let's look at this. What was that? So this is DL, the one which we just created right now. So upon creation, so let's see. Before that, again I just wanted to show you the previous execution. How does it look like when we just try to assign the expression directly from the form tab WF agents without trying to include miscellaneous information. So how does it look like? So the flow looks something like this. So one of the agent has approved it, one of the agents has excluded it. So this is how it looks like. And now when we try to include miscellaneous information and look at this, so it is something like this which has appeared. So it has created 3 different forms for 3 users. So one is for user 6 and one is for user 8 and other one would be for user 9, I hope, if I'm not wrong. Yes. So if it is DL, then the method get workflow agents would return you back with 6, 8 and 9. If it is AA, then it was trying to return us with 6, 1 and 2. So basically the difference in the execution, as you can see, that earlier it was only one work item which got created, but since the way in which we try to include the dynamic multi-line content element and dynamic parallel processing, so that is the reason why it was just trying to create 3 different work items, independent work items for all the 3 different users. So you can see the work item IDs are different. But whereas in the previous example or in the previous execution, it was only one work item ID which was sent to 3 different people, and you can see the same work item. You will be able to see the same work item ID in the other 2 users inbox by executing the transaction SAP WAPI create work list. Again, anyways, we are just going to skip this. So this is what a parallel processing is. Now even if I just approve it, let's go to the inbox and let me approve the work item which is available in my inbox. So if I just navigate to the inbox and if I just try to approve it, so you can see that there is only one work item in the ready state, but there is one more work item which is in process state. So obviously the first entry is the one which is fresh. And if I just click on approve, so let me first click on approve. So I just try to click on approve and it has completed, and let me go back. So now we can see that there's an error still because maybe it's because of the successor node it was not able to identify, but however you can see still that the work items which are still in the other users inbox is still in ready state. Earlier, as I said, that the work item gets disappeared in the other 2 users, but this is not the case with the miscellaneous tab. What happens is actually is that the work item still remains in the other 2 users inbox. So whenever you find an icon something against the user name under the agents like this, so it means that the work item is available in their inbox. Okay, so it is the same icon what we use to try to navigate to SAP Business Workplace, but yeah, the error could be possibly because of the outcomes whatever that we just try to use. So whenever you are trying to use of this miscellaneous tab, one thing you have to remember is that the outcomes whatever that we are going to use, it should be possibly the successor node was not able to identify. So I recommend you to check back again in case if you're just trying to look at this. Maybe it could be just a buffer issue. I'm sure about this, but the whole and sole purpose of showing this whole miscellaneous tab or the execution is that the how or in which way actually the miscellaneous tabs works and how actually your dynamic parallel processing works. So because it has 3 rows and the 3 work items are generated. Okay, so that is how actually we make use of this dynamic parallel processing. Okay, now let me take you back to the workflow builder where we actually try to include this steps. Instead of that, what we try to do now is that we try to change the steps. Instead of making use of dynamic parallel processing, now I would like to show you how does a static fork works. So we make use of fork step for defining parallel processing. So let's go back to the workflow builder. So here is your workflow builder, and if I just double click on this, so let's one more time just look at this. How does it actually trying to look like? Okay, maybe I just have to activate this. Okay, so now let's try to generate a version and then we try to make use of this fork step. So let me save this second version, and let me first include a fork. So how do I include a fork? Choose a place where you want to include a step and click on create, and double click on the step with name fork. So as you can see, there will be one income and multiple outcomes. So that is what the icon says. One thing that one has to remember whenever they are trying to define or include parallel fork step within the workflow, so that the one important thing is that no branch should be or any one of the branches or any branch should not be dependent on other branches execution, or the way the logic or the events, whatever that you want to create or raise, should not be dependent on the other branches. So that is against the way the parallel process concept works. So you should never try to do that. So here is the place, that is one important thing that you have to keep in mind, that no one branch has to be dependent on any other branch, any of the other branches. Okay, so as I said here, you can define a static number of branches, the way it is not the same case with the dynamic parallel processing, the way in which it just tried to identify the number of lines or the rows that are stored in the content element, whatever that you store or associate or map in your miscellaneous tab. Based on that, it used to generate the parallel branches, or that many number of work items. But this is not the case over here. So here is the place where actually you can just try to define the number of parallel branches over here. So out of this, how many branches has to be completed? So out of this, you can either give them end condition can be defined statically also. Out of 3 branches, at least one has to be completed, or else in case if you want to define some condition by making use of any one of the contained elements or something, you can just click on here and define a condition over here. So if I just click on this, so you can see that there are 3 branches included. Now the difference between, one more important difference that I wanted to share, or you can compare with that, is that the miscellaneous tab, whatever that you use, basically you just try to assign whenever you have some dialog work items and you want to send it to multiple users parallelly, independently, so you make use of that miscellaneous tab. But whereas when it comes to fork, you can again define independent processes. So it can have, this branch can have multiple steps, whereas it comes to dynamic parallel processing, it is something like you are just sending the work item to different people, independent people. Okay, but here you can include n number of steps again. So each steps has to be and again it depends on the business process and use case. Either they can be identical or they can be different also. So not really necessary that everything should be same, all the 3 branches should be same. And one important thing that has to be kept in mind is that not one branch, I mean at least any one of the branches should not be dependent on any other branches. So that is what the whole that is what how actually the fork has to work. So the fork, the first fork should not be dependent on second fork, or second fork should not be dependent on first fork, first branch on outcome. Right, so this is how actually your fork step looks like. Now what you can do is that instead of making them assign dynamically by making use of this miscellaneous step, what I try to do is, like, I'll just try to replace this with one more logic over here. I'll just try to delete this. Yeah, it's already deleted. And now what I'll try to do over here is I'll just try to create 3 contained elements and I'll move them to 3 different users. Okay, so let me put it as agent 1, agent 1. I'm just trying to create 3 container elements over here and make you understand how does we make use of this fork. So it's just it's not importing or exporting. I'm just trying to keep it as it is. And one more version, 2. Right, and I'm again saving it. because my function module, as I know that my function module is going to return 3 users, so that is the reason why I'm just trying to define 3 elements. However, this is just a use case or a simple use case which I just wanted to show you the way in which we can make use of fork, but it is not the same case in the real time. There can be different processes or steps that can be included in the fork step. Now what I do is that I'll just try to assign this to 3 different users. So what I'll try to do is, like, I'll just try to cut this or copy this, and then I'll try to paste it over here, and then here, and then here, and then I delete this step. Okay, so the 2 outcomes might be deleted. It says just information that these are the nodes which might be deleted, so I'll just even define the undefined blocks, and yes, click on yes. So on a whole, what we done is, like, we just try to put the same form control step in 3 different branches or in a fork step. So that is what we have done over here. So now you can see that my fork step looks something like this. So each branch, each three of the branches have the same steps. The only difference is that I have to assign each agent to this user, right? So what will I do is that I'll just try to assign the first branch to agent 1. Okay, and the next one would be to agent 2. Okay, and the next one would be agent 3. Or there is also another way of assigning the agents or assigning the rows of that multiple things. So what you can do is, like, you can just go and instead of this just put workflow agents and just put it as 1. Let's try to check whether this works. Okay, and over here as 2, and then the third one I'm just trying to make it as 3, right? So you can see the first one is with 1 and the second one was with 2 and 3, right? Let's activate this and see what has happens. Okay, and yeah, let's try to execute this. Before that, let's try to refresh the buffer, as it's we generated some versions, so now it's time to refresh some buffer. So execute \osw obuf, and let's click on start synchronization, and then let's try to refresh the org assignment also. So let's navigate to SWD and click on refresh organizational assignment, and then we'll navigate to SC38 where we can execute our program. So let's execute this, and this time let me give it as LH, which is Lufthansa, and let me change the flight ID also, connection number. So let it make it as to 400, and let's just check and click on star. So you will be able to identify some dates. So let's change the date to 9 and I keep the remaining information as it is. Okay, and let's save this and check the workflow log. So there is a booking ID which has got generated in the status bar. You can see that the booking number is 19501. So let's go back to SAP Workflow log or the report SWI1. And you can see now execute F8 and click on over here and check the work item container that the values LH. Yes, and it has identified 3 agents, and who are the 3 agents? It is 6, 5 and 7, right? And now let's see what has happened with the workflow status. And you can see that there are 3 independent work items which are generated. So the first one is all users. Okay, sorry. Click on agents. So user 5, user 6 and user 7. So 5, 6, 7 are the users who are for whom the work item is sent. Now let's click on this, navigate to the technical workflow log. Now let's look at the get workflow log task container, or the container whatever that we are trying to. So we are trying to export LH and we are trying to import the workflow agents 6, 5 and 7. So the same thing, even it is just updated in your workflow container. So in order to navigate to workflow container, click on the first item of the workflow log and you can see the workflow agents over here. So I just defined with the same names across all the 3 containers. So that is the reason why there is no difference. Okay, and now let me navigate and execute this work item from my inbox. So the first work item, I'm just trying to execute it. And you can see this is the first work item which is in ready state, and I just double click on it and I say approve. And once I approve, I again navigate back to my workflow log, and now you can see that earlier this should be the behavior, because once it has been the logically it has been actually sent to the 3 different people, and it has been assigned to the 3 different users. Okay, so the end condition is that out of 3 branches, or if you just look at this workflow graphical log, out of 3 branches, at least 1 branch has to be completed. So that is the reason why what it has done is that it has just executed the first branch and it has made. So this is the branch which got executed. So the icon which you see in a dotted cube, it is logically deleted by the system. So these branches were created, but because of the end condition, like out of 3, at least 1 branch has to be completed. So it has completed. So if I just go back to the workflow builder and make it as 2 as end condition, and then we'll try to execute and check how does it look like. So let's go back to the workflow builder and try to change the end condition of the fork to 2, and just look at this, and I have revised it. So what we just try to do, we'll just activate, and again we'll just submit the same request again back. So what we'll do is like we'll navigate to SE38, that report, execute the report, and this time we'll change the connection number, but we'll just try to keep the same date, and I think the date should also be changed. And the remaining things same, and save it. Now let's navigate to the workflow log, as the session is already open. So what we try to do is like we'll just try to refresh it. So now once I refresh, so there is a new entry which got created. So if you look at the work item container of this step, so I just want to reconfirm that LH, and it was 401. So we'll go back, we'll go and look at the work items. So it is the same. LH means so the method or the workflow agents will be populated with 3 different agents. So what I just tried to do is like I'm just trying to click expand into the chronicle log, and if I have to just hide the details, so I can just click on hide details, or if I have to just show the details, I can just click on show details. So what I just try to do is like now I'll just again go back. Now the end condition, as you can see, out of 3 branches, at least 2 branches has to be completed. So I'll complete one of the work items from my inbox and see what is the difference in the previous execution and now. So I'll just execute it, and this time I'll reject it. Okay, so one branch or one of the branches that has been come out of the the branches, it's proved. So you can see that one work item which is in my inbox, it's got completed, it is in the completed status, but the other 2 work items which are with the user 0, 5 and 7, it is still in ready state. So until and unless they approve, the workflow or the branch, the execution of the branches gets paused, or it still remains in the process. So the workflow still remains in process state, and only the work item which I just completed from my inbox, it is in completed state. Remaining all other remains same. So you can see that as soon as I complete your flight booking, mail has sent, and again whatever the steps that I just assigned, you can see that. Now if I just navigate to the graphical log, you can see the difference now, that earlier the icons were in the dotted cubes, but now you can see it is a continuous dark black and white cubes still in the ready state, agent ready, and you can say that here is also agent ready, and you can see that this is the one which I just completed. User 06 is the one who has completed it. So once I rejected it, so it has just sent an email rejection, and then it is still in the process of, it's just tried to hold its execution till any one of the branches. So out of 3, 2 branches has to be executed. So it is just waiting. The workflow is halted, or still it remains in process. Temporarily it stops its execution till any one of the branch gets completed its execution. So that is how actually the fork is. So the primary difference between your fork and your the dynamic parallel processing is that with the activity steps, or the steps wherever you just try to assign, you basically send it to the different people. So that is the reason why you make use it. But whereas when it comes to the fork, you can have multiple steps within each branch, and you can have different steps in each branch. Again, it should not be it is not really necessary they should be identical, but only one thing that you have to keep in mind is that you have at least any one of the branches should not be dependent on any other branch, right? So that is what one important thing that you have to keep in mind when you are trying to define the fork. Now this looks fine from the perspective that dynamically you were able to I was able to assign the agents. But if I will be able to get the same kind of feature for even replicating a specific number of steps to multiple people, so how do I do that? So for that sake, again, you have a step called block. So we can make use of this block. So basically block is something like your dynamic fork or dynamic loop. So whenever you have a hierarchical way of like until unless one loop iteration completes, you don't want to continue to the next iteration. So that is how actually you can define even by using that. So let's try to look at the dynamic step in the next session, and we'll complete and we'll conclude this process of understanding workflow builder, and that is how actually you can just make use of it. So in the next session, what I would like to show you is that I would like to share you some information on the other tab or other section, work item display. I would like to show you something by assigning some values over here, and let's look at these two tabs as we just try to understand what is work item display and why we use miscellaneous tab also. So in the next session, I'll try to give you an example how does it look like. And in the coming sessions, I'll make use of this program exits and make you understand. When we start understanding what is rule and how do we create rules, in that case I'll try to make you understand what is even methods and program exits also. So we are almost done with all the tabs except the 4 tabs: latest and requested start, latest start and requested end. These I'll exclusively discuss only when I'm talking about escalation techniques or deadline monitoring techniques. So apart from this, we are still pending with only 2 tabs. One is your program exit and methods. So I'll discuss these 2 tabs in the coming sessions. Thank you very much.